Okay, good morning, everyone. So I'll say a short Dvar Torah on the yesterday's Parsha, Naso, and then we'll continue the halachic discussions. Something very nice I heard Friday morning from Leo Engelman. He gives a permanent shir every Friday morning. It's in Hebrew, so it may not be good for this crowd, but it's very deep, based on Rav Kook. Rav Kook's thoughts a lot. He's in the course of Midos, going through every Midah, Nava, Gvura, Kavod, all that, each and every Midah, and checking in depth how to use it properly. So we're now up to Kavod, which is a Midah that's very difficult to overcome. We all enjoy some kavod in life, doesn't hurt, and the question is how do we lead it in the right direction and use it properly. So one of the main aspects of using this midah attribute of kavod properly is the question whether a person feels somewhat complete, somewhat respects his own self from within. When a person lives a life that's fulfilled from within his internal potential, so then he needs less recognition from the outside world. The more the person is empty inside and isn't using his attributes too well, isn't exercising his potential to the most he can, then he has this desire to receive recognition from the outside world, and then he needs the kavod. He needs the imaginary type that's not real. He needs everyone to praise him. He needs everyone to clap their hands for him because he's inconfident of his own self. That's one of the points Rav Kook elaborates over when he speaks about kavod. When a person is filled from within inside, has a content feeling about what he does in his life and how he exercises his potential and so on and so forth, then he needs less of the external, and then he can give over kavod to other people. He's able. This is one of the midos that if you use it properly, then helps you refrain from jealousy, from hatred, from fighting, all the terrible other attributes. Because if one isn't fulfilled from inside, doesn't feel fulfilled from inside, then he's jealous of others. Then he hates those who are higher up than he is. He fights those who he thinks are taking his place in the world because he's not fulfilled. He doesn't have this internal content feeling with himself. So he can't have any competition. He can't take it. But when he's fulfilled within himself, then he's able to give others as much kavod as they need. And he's able to bear the fact that there are other people higher than he is. He knows that's as much potential he has. That's what he can reach. And he's fine. He's content. He's okay with it. Whereas if it's emptiness, so he needs to step over others in order to feel special. So it's a very, very important midah to use properly and give kavod to others instead of demand kavod for yourself. That's a very important concept. So all this connects. Rav Lior explained to Birkas Kohanim, which we also read in this, yesterday's Parsha, Parshas Naso. So if you realize, Birkas Kohanim is in single tense. Yevarechecha Hashem v'yishmerecha, Yair Hashem panav eilecha v'yichoneka. Everything is in single tense, even though the Kohanim may be blessing a crowd of hundreds. So the meaning of that is that the Kohen is blessing each and every one of us personal. It's a personal blessing to each and every one, because each and every one has different talents, has different potential, has different goals in life. So the bracha has to be personal. A bracha is the fact that the Kohen asks of Hashem to enable us to fulfill our potential. That's what a bracha means, that we have this ability to be blessed, meaning to exercise and work upon our attributes and be who we're supposed to be. That's why when a person goes to a Rav to receive a bracha, so sometimes it's a very general bracha. So it's good for all. But when you need something more specific, when you'd like to perfect your life in a certain way, so you ask for a very specific bracha, meant for yourself only and for your situation. And that's where the rabbi prays for Hashem to enable the person to fill his potential and to complete a certain section, a certain situation in life that needs to be completed. So that's why it's on a personal basis. Each and every one receiving his own needs, his own clarity with himself, with his life, and ability to fulfill their potential. But then the question arises, how come the very last section of the Birkas Kohanim is also in single text? V'yasem lecha shalom. That's very awkward, because shalom normally means between two people who are fighting, who are enemies or dispute each other, misunderstand each other. Couple sometimes fight. So shalom normally needs to be at least amongst two people, if not two groups, if not two nations. So why is it lecha? It should have been ve'asem lachem shalom, because that needs to be by at least two. All the rest can be a personal, like we said, personal message, personal bracha, personal blessing. But the last section of ve'asem lecha shalom doesn't make sense. So the answer that Rav Lior explained was based on this Rav Kook idea of kavod. The wholesomeness, the completeness, firstly begins within ourselves. Yasem lecha shalom. Be in peace with yourself, first of all. Respect yourself, admire yourself, feel proud of who you are. Not talking about boastful, which is imaginary, which isn't real. We're talking about really what you have in you. Be in peace with yourself. Be content with who you are. That's the Asem Lecha Shalom. Before we refer to other human beings in the world, first of all, each and every one themselves should try to hopefully reach a state of mind and feel as content as they can, as full as they can, by always forever fulfilling themselves, fulfilling their potential all the time. But that's how you reach this internal shalom, peace with yourself, and then you can make peace with others. Otherwise, it's not going to work, because otherwise you're always trying to overdo others. You're always trying to step over others because you don't feel good within yourself. So you're never going to be able to make peace with others. So the very first condition of making peace with others is lecha shalom. First, make sure within you that you feel strong and good with yourself, positive feelings about yourself. So that's a message to take. Not Hashem. It's not simple, but to try to strive in that direction. Okay. Before we go on with the book, halachic discussions from the book, I'll mention a halacha that came up last week. A question I was asked, looked up in various books, couldn't find the exact situation, but I think I have the answer, which I gave to the person who asked me last week. And the question was, it has to do with Hilchos Shabbos, so I'm mentioning it in this class. The question was about borer, about sorting, separating good from bad, or sorting different objects in their place, to put them back in place. So we know that the three conditions of borer, of separating on Shabbat, that allow us to separate on Shabbat, ochel bayad umiyad. That's in short form, all three conditions. Ochel mitoch psolet, you must take what you want to use and leave aside what you don't, and not take away what you don't want and leave what you do. Bayad, meaning you mustn't use any utensil to separate. You have to do it with your hand. Doesn't mean bare hands. It could be with a knife, a fork, or a spoon. That's an extension of your hand. But you can't use a kli, a vessel that normally sorts things, like a sifter, things of that sort. And then finally is miyad, that your need for this sorting or for this separating is for immediate use. You need it right now. You can't do it a few hours before the time you really need to use this food or halim that you sorted out. You need to do it immediately. Immediately means within half an hour to the time you would like to use it. That's immediate enough. Within half an hour, that's fine. Unless the preparation for the meal that you're sorting things or separating things takes longer than half an hour. If the preparation for the meal, because it's a big meal and you have many guests and you have to work on all kinds of things, so the moment you need to start working on the meal, that's considered miyad. That's considered immediate. But you can't extend that to a time where you need to do other things unrelated to the meal besides preparing for the meal. That's not considered miyad. That's already saying it too much. For example, a woman who would like to go daven Shabbat morning in shul, and that's a nice long service of 2 hours, an hour and 3/4, depending on the minyan. It takes time. Sometimes there's even a shir after davening, so there's a shir for another half hour, 20 minutes. So she'd like to stay for all that. She knows when she comes back home, people are going to be hungry. They want to start the meal. It's already kiddush and the meal and everything else. So she'd like to start preparing for the meal before going to shul. She wakes up early. She has a half an hour to prepare for the meal, which means to set the table, which means to cut up the salad, which means all kinds of things to prepare for the meal. That cannot be done if it involves sorting or separating. If it doesn't involve any malacha, then fine, do it 5 hours before, or do it the night before. Those, for example, want to set their table the night before, after the Friday night, as it's called wrongfully in the American term. It's not Friday night. It's Erev Shabbos meal, Leil Shabbos meal. So after the Leil Shabbos meal, someone would like to now set the table for tomorrow morning, have it all prepared already. But that's problematic, because if your cutlery is all mixed together because you wash dishes after the Leil Shabbos meal, so now all the cutlery is all combined, all one mixture of knives, forks, spoons, tablespoons, everything together. So you cannot set the table Friday night, because you'll be sorting the knives from the forks and from the spoons and putting everything in place, which is borer. That's a melacha borer, and it's not for immediate use. The fact that you want to be prepared in advance doesn't help us halachically. You have still the entire night and beginning of the morning until you really need to use this.
Rabbi, aren't there poskim that say that there is no such thing as borer when it comes to kalim?
There are.
Borer is food related. It's not kalim related.
There are, but those are a minority of the poskim. It was completely clear-cut psak that there is borer b'kalim. That's written everywhere. Mishnah Berurah, Shmira Shabbos Kilchasa, Rav Ovadia Yosef, all poskim from all sides definitely hold that there is borer b'kalim. The only distinction some poskim make is when the kalim are very obvious, distinguishable one from another. Very obviously distinguishable.
Is the fork distinguishable easy from a knife or a spoon?
Correct. That's true. Let's say
you guys a 3-year-old child. Is this a fork? Or is this a knife? Is this a spoon?
That's true. But let's take, I agree. But let's take first a different example. If you have a game, the kids play with all kinds of games. and they have these pieces of the game that some are even white and black, but they look the same, like damka, checker pieces, or even chess pieces. So when they're all together, all in one pile, all mixed together, that's already more difficult to distinguish. The fact that the color is different, still the piece looks the same. Otherwise, there's almost never going to be a problem with Boreh. If we call that easy to distinguish, then there's no Boreh in the world, because then we can distinguish easily. Okay, but I'm saying those who hold that by Kalim there is Boreh by Kalim, you'll never find a situation if you call that, or let's say you have different types of shirts. This type of shirt and that type of shirt and this color and that color, they're all together in a pile. That's hard to distinguish. That's not considered distinguishable, obviously distinguishable. You need to check. This shirt is the one with the buttons. This shirt is without. This shirt is with a collar. This shirt is without. This is this color. This is that color. Those are quite similar one to one another. I agree, and that's Rav Ovadia Yosef decided that way, that by cutlery, that's very distinguishable even if they're in a pile. You can easily tell the difference between a fork and a knife. It sticks out. So you're right. According to Rav Ovadia Yosef, it's a very big idea. Chidush by Ashkenazim. It's for, I guess maybe by Sfar in their other poskim, we'll go with him. Ashkenazi world doesn't exist. Now there is one posek who says, and that's the Aruch HaShulchan. The Aruch HaShulchan. He comes up with the leniency. I just want to recall, to remember if it's the same leniency or it's for a different reason. Yeah, it could be from the same reason. He also holds that way, the Aruch HaShulchan, that there is no, in cutlery, again, specifically, sakinim, mazlegot, kapiyot, he discusses that specifically. He says that's not called a ta'arobet, that's not considered a mixture, right? Because of so easily distinguished between one another, it's not considered mixed, right? He's also a posek, Ashkenazi posek who holds the same. Someone showed it to me yesterday. We spoke about this issue after the Koret Minyan. So someone showed me the Aruch HaShulchan. But again, Mishnah Bura, Shmir Shabbos Kilchasa, Aruch HaShabbos, all the books that came out for cut sack for Ashkenazim today, the modern books for today, they don't go with that. They decided that it's considered ta'arovet, it's considered a mixture, and you can't sort them.
That's only if you're drawing from a pilot.
A pilot mixture.
They're pre-sorted.
Of course,
of
course.
It's already done.
Not an issue, no problem, right? No issue at all, right? That's why I said only if after you had washed the dishes after your Friday night meal, and now they're all to combine together in the drying.
Can you get around that by putting it away so there's sort of a trick to put your silverware away back in the drawer?
Oh, so that's okay. So we'll get to the solution for that. Yeah. So putting away as is sorting. That can be done because you're sorting. But the trick that the Shmir Shabbos Kilchasa offers in this case is while it's still dripping, it's still wet. If it hasn't dried up totally yet, what you could do is not to pick and choose all the forks and then the knives and the spoons. Just take anything that comes out first, dry it, and then put it away. What are we doing then? The moment we take out something without choosing what we want, we just take out something, our intent now, firstly, the first station before we put it away is to dry it. So we're not sorting anything. We're taking whatever comes to hand and drying it. At this point, we did not decide the first action we took out the spoon or the fork and knife from the mixture wasn't in order to sort it, it was in order to dry it. It's a random draw plus the two factors here. A random draw plus an action, pre-sorting action. First, dry it, because a random draw could have been enough to put back in the drawer by, yes, the play on words here. Could be just by, they're all dry, and blindfoldly take something out and then put it in the drawer. That the Shemona Shabbos Chasa does not allow, because that's too much of a trick. That's already too close to sorting. And at the end all situation will be that they'll all be in place now, and you just took them one by one and sorted them. So that's considered sorting. It has to be that there's a station in between that has nothing to do with sorting. My action was just in order to dry this fork. That's it. Now I could have put it back in the pile. So at that point, I haven't sorted anything. I just dried it up. Now that I have it itself in my hand alone, with that being the pile, now there's no bora anymore because they're not sorting from anything else. Then I can put it in place. So that's what Shemona Shabbos Chasa allows, and then you can have it all sorted out in the drawer in each one in its place, and then you can set the table even Friday night because they're not sorting anymore while you set the table because they're all in place. So that's that's one trick to use if you would like to do so anyhow. And the second is to take the pile. That's when they're all dry, because they wouldn't do this when they're wet. If they're all dry, take the pile and throw it on a table. Lay it out on a table in a way that they are distant from one another, or most of them at least, are not touching each other. That's social distancing, right? Apply the social distancing to the forks and knives and spoons. So this way, they're no longer in a pile. They're no longer combined, mixed together. So now you can just pick and then you can even choose all the forks. Take all the forks because it's like one by one. They're not together anymore. So you choose all the forks, put them in place. All the knives, put them in place. They're no longer in a mixture. How do we decide what a mixture means? How do we know what's considered ta'arovet in order for it to be boring? So, they're on the same table, right? They're all on the same table, so you would think that makes it a ta'arovet, that makes it a mixture. So Shlomo Zalman explains to us that ta'arovet means in the eyes of human beings. When you ask people, do you consider this all mixed or separate? Each and every circumstance specifically. You take a poll, ask some people, is this mixed or is this separate? So if it's nicely spread out, you're right. If there's a lot of forks and knives and spoons all on one table, and even if you spread them out, there's still not that much distant one from another, then it's still a mixture. Whereas if it's just 2 or 3 people who ate Friday night, which normally you wouldn't need to use that cutlery dafka to set the table for the next morning. You've got some other pieces, some other forks, knives to use for tomorrow morning. But whatever, it's a very large table, or you throw it on 2 tables, half the pile on one table, half the pile on another table. The moment you get it quite separate one from another, then people will start saying, no, this isn't a mixture. They're not together at all. They're all separate from one another. So it's how people just regard it. That's how we decide if it's a Torah or not. Now, some poskim didn't like this definition of a ta'arovet because they said that's very subjective. It's very subjective. One person can say, no, this isn't a mixture. Another person can say, of course it is. So how can we decide? And this is a d'oraita malacha, d'oraita level. If it's a mixture, then separate will be a d'oraita sin if it's not for ochel, bayad, umiyad, if it's not all 3 conditions together. And if it's not a mixture, then it's totally permissible. So how can it be that we define a melacha d'oraita by the way people see, by the way people define subjectively, personally, the situation? But the problem is, it's very hard to come up with a different understanding, a different definition of a mixture. It's hard to find any concrete technical definition.
And just like nothing is touching.
You could say that, but even when not touching, could still be a mixture. Like David just said before, if let's say it's on a small table, and there's barely not touching, but they're very close to one another. And you have 10 of the forks, 10 of the knives, 10 of the spoons, and they're not touching, but they're very close. Still, people look at this like from on top. They don't look carefully to see there's space between each one. They see it as a mixture.
Did you mind this year in the building of the Mishkan what the order was?
What they had done there?
Yeah. Which actually building the Mishkan?
There, the Bora was when they had they the wheat, the kernels of the wheat had the garin.
Right? It was food related.
There was food related, yes.
Right. That's why they said that's what.
Yeah,
that's what I thought.
right. But, right, but in the Mishkan, yeah, a lot of stuff was related, and that we don't do.
That's what I thought.
Right. Let's say take grinding. Okay, take grinding. Grinding was also food related in the Mishkan because they ground the wheat, the kernels of wheat. They ground it, but you still can't grind today anything. You can't grind wood on Shabbat, the raita, tochen by wood, and you can't grind metal. You can't grind anything, not only food. Tochen is by everything. So why should Bora be only by food? That's something that I haven't seen a posek in our days that decide that holds that way. There's no Bora by Kelim. Again, only this idea that we said before, if they're easily recognized, distinguishable, that's not Bora, but that's for a different reason. That's because it's not a mixture to begin with. Not considered mixed. But take Shlomo Zalman's definition of a mixture and look at the cutlery that's drying up after being washed all together in this holder that lets it drip and dry. If you look at it just from the outside, that looks to me like a mixture. If you would ask me, when it's all together, 10 forks, 10 knives, 10 spoons, and they're all mixed with each other in that drying tool, then it looks...
Taking that thing that is all together.
Yeah, the pile. That's not Bora, because you're not separating one from another.
You have created a situation.
Exactly. That's why it's allowed. It's a very cool idea, right? That you're not Bora yet by just throwing it on the table or on the floor and separating one from another, because you haven't yet separated into groups, separated from another. You just caused it to be non-mixed anymore, not sorted yet.
This is a race to clean up the board games, what you're saying. The most popular board games, I recognize, is Risk, Monopoly.
Correct.
All those games.
To separate them back into their own colors or places. Correct. Because it's not for immediate use. Unless one wants to play another game. Unless you spread it out, right. If you, the kids will love this. Tell them, take this and throw it on the floor as much as strong as you can. As strong as you can. The kids will love that, but then they have to pick it up afterwards, of course. They can't just stay at that point. But that's a way to sort it all back. And or for immediate use, meaning if one wants to play another game of Monopoly. Right. The last game will not be right. Then you have to leave it out as is, all mixed together. They could put it back in the box, all back in the box, but not in separate piles, separate. Right. Not Masuda, not fixed up. Right. Not organized. Yeah. Okay. So that's all. That is quite clear. Okay, now comes the question. Okay, this is Borer. Right. This Borer was Borer. This is clear. Now let's get to this interesting question. So I was asked last week. Someone told me that his wife doesn't like the fact that when they have the cutlery drying in that clear, that utensil that holds all the cutlery together, there's sometimes one that's very high because it's like the ladle. The soup ladle that's very high, or a spoon or a fork that's used for serving spoon, serving fork, which are very high. So for her eye, she doesn't like the way it looks. When she sees that, she doesn't care for the fact that they're all drying up on the same height, but that one that sticks up doesn't look to her neat enough. So she'd like to take that piece that's very high, take it out of the pile and put it in the drawer. Put that away. Way before she needs it or she doesn't need it. What's that?
Well, she just taught us now. It's not even a question.
Oh, why not?
It's so easily distinguishable.
Oh.
It is so easily distinguishable.
Oh, very good. Exactly. So immediately my gut answer was exactly that. Even though it's in the pile, it's mixed together, it's all in the same mixture, but it's so easily distinguishable. You see it standing up much higher than all the rest. So even non-Avada Yosef people, Rabbi should say that that's okay.
Right.
Even if Shlomo Zalman's idea should be enough. That it's not. If you look at the pile, people will say, no, this isn't mixed with all the rest. You see it separate, right? But then I asked myself, as I was answering, I said to him, but that's true for the upper part. But the handle of that high up utensil, the handle is definitely within a mixture. If you look only at the handle up to the height of the other utensils that are there, the other cutlery, the rest of the cutlery that's there, at that height, it's totally mixed.
But no one in the world will tell you, you know what? Up to the handle is mixed. And above the handle is, I would say the ladle's not mixed. So that's your answer. Nobody would say, up until the grab point, the grip is
right.
Above the grip
is not mixed.
Oh, answers like that.
Okay.
All I do is take the top off.
Yeah.
Like that.
Unscrew it and take it off. Yeah.
The ladle's not mixed. That's what you would say.
I get it. Okay.
100 out of 100 would say that. Not 99 out of 100. 100 would say that.
Yeah, I tend to agree, but I just wanted to make it to be sure about that.
Exactly.
I wanted to be sure about that.
Subjective. If you're looking at it from the top down, then you see that that's standing by itself. And if you're looking at it bottom, then it all looks the same. You can't tell which is the ladle.
Right. If you look only at the pile from the bottom of it.
It's subjective, the eye of the beholder that you're thinking about.
Right, right. But that David is saying now, why should we look at it that way? Let's just look at the pile together. Right, right. Right. No, I definitely tend to agree as your feeling is after we explained all the definition of Borer, but I just wanted to make sure. So I didn't find anyone discussing this specific question. But by the way, I did come up with something Motzei Shabbat. This I haven't told this fellow yet. I hope they did it correctly because I didn't realize when he asked the question, what happens if you have 3 or 4 of them? Because usually when you use serving spoons or forks, then you have 2 of them for the salad, and you have another ladle for the soup, and you may have another long knife that you use for cutting things. So you have like 3 or 4 of these high up utensils, and then you're again a problem with Borer. Because between them, take them all together and do not separate them in the drawer to their each and every position. Sometimes in the drawer, like in our house, we don't have specific compartments for each long utensil like that. We throw them all together in one pile, right? All in one pile. So that's fine. If you pick them up all together and throw them as a pile into the drawer, that's fine. Because you've only separated the obviously distinguishable part from what isn't distinguishable. That's okay, because it's obviously distinguishable. And you haven't separated one from another, so that's also kept in the pile. So I just have to clarify that. I just realized that on Motzei Shabbat. When I saw it after washing dishes on Motzei Shabbat, I saw them high up, and then I saw, wait, I got 3 or 4 of them here. So between them, let's say if you have separate drawers for or different locations to place 2 or 3 of those high utensils in one drawer, and the other one is a different drawer, a different cabinet or something. So you can't separate that because then you're separating amongst the ones who are all high, all tall. And then that's again the Borer. So, right. You can do the same thing we said before, or dry them up one by one, or drying up each one, and then put them in. Right. Those other 2 techniques, of course, work for this too. But amongst them, we have the problem of Borer again, because they're not easily distinguishable, all the tall ones. Anyway, so the proof I found for this being correct, I had remembered, and then I found something even more lenient than what I had remembered. I'd remembered from Rav Malka, and it's written clearly in his book, another situation which we're sometimes not aware of that could be Borer. And that is when you clear off the table. So you make a pile of plates. Normally what we do is make a pile of plates and we shove off the remaining food or non-edible stuff, rubbish, onto the top plate. They have a whole pile of the garbage, right? Together with all the cutlery. On that top plate, upon top of the pile, we've got all the garbage, leftover food garbage together with all the cutlery. It's also usually that's how it's done. You stick it on the same plate, then you take the whole pile to the kitchen. Now what? You want to throw the garbage away into the garbage pail, and you want to throw the cutlery into the sink. Is that considered a mixture? The fact that they're all on one plate and all combined with each other?
They're two separate piles. They're very separate. You don't have a mixture of the cutlery on top of the garbage. The cutlery's over here and the garbage over there.
Okay, if you're as neat as that, then fine. If you're neat like that, then fine. If it's all separate piles.
A telephone and a book on a big plate. It's a mixture. Right.
A telephone is anyhow muktzah.
The cutlery I'm saving,
a telephone, hopefully you're not having a plate on Shabbat, but okay. Yeah.
I like glasses and a book.
Right. No, that's for sure. That's for sure not. No, I agree. We said that. That's what we said in the definition of mixtures, what people regard as a picture. Right. But let's take a case where the cutlery is deep into the center of the plates, or at least one or two of the pieces. Doesn't be all the forks and knives are inside, or teaspoons. But some of them are actually buried under the garbage part on the plate. You definitely have some, happens to us all the time. And some of them get buried underneath because we scraped off in one plate and then we put that cutlery on that plate already. And you scrape off the next plate, so it starts to get buried and buried and buried. So it turns out that some of them are sticking out, or even in a totally separate pile, side by side on that plate. That's perfectly fine. But there's some that's sticking out, partially under the garbage part and partially sticking out, and some of the cutlery is completely buried under the garbage. Completely buried. If you have a spoon or a small fork or whatever, it's buried. Now that is more difficult to tell me that's easily distinguishable, because the moment it's buried and you just see here and there a little bit of the metals showing itself, it's still, you'd ask someone, I agree that it's a totally different function. This is garbage, this is good, but that's exactly boreh. The stones, the pebbles within the pile of which is the boreh of the Mishkan. They asked before, when they used to throw up in the air what's called zoreh, not zorea, not plant seeds, zoreh. A willow? Okay, good.
Oh, sorry, winnow, right?
Winnow. Okay, winnowing, exactly. So you throw it up in the air, and then the shaft, I think it's called, the shaft, the klipa, chaff, CHAFF, chaff. Okay, the chaff blows away with the wind, and the kernel itself falls down. The seed itself falls to the ground, and then that's called zoreh, and then borer was when they had to separate between all those seeds and the actual earth, the dirt that it fell onto. So that's a mixture. Besides that, when they made piles of the wheat to begin with, or after it's just the seeds, they made piles. So there were some stones and other non-inedible parts that went into the pile as well. So they had to separate that as well, that from that. So everyone understands that a stone is inedible and the seeds of the wheat are edible. That's what we want to use. That's what we want to grind and make flour, make bread and all that. But still, that's borer because you're taking out the bad from the good. So here, if you throw the garbage away from the top plate and you're left with the cutlery that some of it was buried, combined with all the dirt, sometimes to get it out, you get your hands dirty because you always have to stick your hand in and get it and pull it out before you throw the garbage pile into the garbage pail. So is that considered boreh? So Rafil Malka actually differentiates between these two cases. He says the moment it's sticking out, the cutlery is sticking out from the garbage pile, then it's not boreh. Then you can just pull it out and put it in the sink. even though it's not for immediate use. Because you're taking good from bad, but not for immediate use. So it should have been boreh. But since it's sticking out, then it's easily distinguishable, no problem. It's not considered tarobic, it's not considered a mixture. But the few pieces, cutlery pieces, which are buried under the whole pile of garbage, that is boreh, he says.
But you're taking the good from the bad.
But not for immediate use. You're putting it in the sink and you're going to wash it the next morning or after Shabbat. That's not immediate use. Right. Using what you just took out of the pile. That's exactly his answer. Take it out from the pile, even the buried ones. The ones that are sticking out, so just pull it out and put it in the sink. That's fine. That's a board. That's easily distinguishable. The ones that are buried, says Rav Malka, use immediately. How do you use dirty cutlery that are buried under? Use that to scrape off the actual garbage that's on the plate.
I was going to use the other one.
No, then right. Then we can't. Then we're separating one from the other, right? So use what you just took out from, you dug out from underneath the pile. Use that to scrape off the actual food. That's what I do at home. Every Shabbat, I scrape off the dirt from the plates using the buried utensils, buried cutlery. After I've dug it out, if there is any, so it shouldn't be boring. So that's something to be aware of, and that shows us. Oh, now why did I bring all this? I think this is clear-cut proof to what David said before. If Rav Malka is considering the buried cutlery as a mixture with the garbage, he considers that as a mixture, because when people look at it, they'll tell you, yes, this is all mixed. Who cares if it's garbage and cutlery, but it's a mixture. So if it's considered a mixture, so it should be born. And yet, he himself holds that if some of it is sticking out, the cutlery is half buried, half out, it's not considered boreh, because that's already easily distinguishable. But what about the question we had before? I understand the handle of the cutlery is sticking out, but the part that's still under the pile a little bit, under the garbage pile a little bit, that is considered a mixture. So why isn't it considered boreh to take that out? The answer is because the sticking out part is really what distinguishes the whole piece from the garbage. So the same in this case, in our case, where we have those tall utensils that are serving pieces that are taller than all the rest. So the fact that they're taller and higher makes them distinguishable, even though the part of the handle is within the mixture. I think that's very good proof that we don't care for that part, because we look at the entire situation at home. The entire situation seems to us separate already. So that's proof of that. But besides all that, as I was looking all this up, I found in the Orchos Shabbos, which are normally
very
machmir, right? They're very machmir. They're based on Rav Shmuel Auerbach, mainly his psak, which is mostly like Rav Yoshi. There was that school of thought, and they're based on mostly on that. So the Orchos Shabbos, very, very amazingly, hold totally different. They say that the cutlery amongst the garbage that was piled up from clearing from the table is never considered mixed. Even they specify, even those pieces of cutlery that were buried underneath the pile of garbage are not considered a mixture, because they're so easily distinguishable, which is something that I don't really understand. Because if you ask a layman, nothing to do with Hilchos Shabbos, tell me, you see a mixed pile of all kinds of things here together, he'll say yes. Even though he knows clearly there's a difference between the use of this and the use of that. This is the garbage and this is to be used later. But right now, it's all mixed. I'm thinking now, if let's say one of those cutlery pieces fell into the garbage pail. As I was shoving everything in the garbage pail, a spoon fell in, a fork fell in, that's in the garbage pail. Would someone say that that's not considered a mixture? Not saying when it's lying right on top of everything, like clearly on top, not dug in any way. But let's say it fell with a little bit of more garbage on top of it. Can someone say that's not a mixture? Because this is cutlery and this is garbage? I wouldn't think so. I would think this is a total mixture. There's no way that you can take it out on Shabbat and put it into the sink. The only way you can reach for it and get it out during Shabbat, of course, after Shabbat, you make sure not to throw it in the outer garbage.
You can take it out, wash it, and use it.
Oh, that's the only way. Only if you want to use it immediately after you do it, right? Take it out. That's called ochel mitoch psolet. You're taking the good from the bad. Bayad, with your hand. Umiyad, you have to use it immediately. So you can think of a use that you need, that you can use it for immediately after you wash it and use it. But that's the only way. You can't just dig it out and put it in the sink and wait for a few hours later to wash it. But according to the Orchos Shabbos, it seems to be like they would say yes, not Tarot. That's our mixture. I don't understand their point.
Utensils and food is never a mixture.
Okay, so I'm saying if that's what they hold, then it should be true in the garbage, like I just said now, and something fell into the garbage bill. Doesn't sound to me reasonable. Why would that be? I don't get that. It's a kula which I can't understand.
Right. If
it's on a plate all mixed up in
No, I agree. I just gave it a more extreme situation to show how come I don't understand their point. Why would they define this as a non-mixture point? In a chinami, right? This is also not a mixture, but I'm just trying to show why. Yeah, it's hard for me to understand their point. Right. Then what is a mixture? Right.
But they're saying, just by definition, utensil, silverware, and food just isn't a mixture.
Okay, that's why I get from what they're saying, but I don't understand how come. When you have again,
they're totally different.
I would also, I'm sure it's not like that.
Yeah, you have stones, pebbles.
Most stones are a little small.
It doesn't. The size doesn't matter. The size doesn't matter. If you have a rock like this, that's inside that's in the pile, that doesn't make a difference. The only time it makes a difference, the size, is when you have liquid and solid. Liquid and solid combined together, then the size makes a difference. The Shvitat Shabbat, there's a book called Shvitat Shabbat, written by Yitzchak Molson. He comes up with this definition that if you have a chunk of solid food in a liquid, doesn't have to be food, but as an example, in liquid, so if the solid is larger than an average walnut, gadol me'egoz, then it's not considered a mixture. That's easily distinguishable. That again goes back to that general definition of whatever is easily distinguishable is not considered tarobos, not a mixture. So when you have, let's say, pickles, okay, that's the best example. You have pickles in a kufsat shimurim, preservative can, in a can, right? In a can, you bought the can. First of all, you can open the can on Shabbat according to Shlomo Zalman normally. You don't need to puncture a hole on the bottom and then open the top. That's the Chazon Ish opinion. Shlomo Zalman says you do not need to because you're never going to use this can for anything. You're going to throw it away. You're not making it clean by any means. And these are the Chazon Ish. They did use it because there was poverty then. So they washed it, rinsed it out well. I don't know how they got the smell out of it from a pickle can, but somehow they got it out after many tries. And then they used to use it as a pencil case or whatever. They used to use these things. Today, no one uses them. It goes straight to the garbage. So it's called a mustiki in halachic terms, which is not a kli. You're not creating any kli. It's something that's going to the garbage. So Shlomo Zalman allows to open it normally. And then, from the borer point of view, can you dump the water, the liquid, out of the can in order to just have the pickles? The answer is yes. It's not borer. Why? Because each pickle. But that doesn't matter here because you're doing the psolet mitoch ha'ochel. You're throwing out the psolet and leaving the good, which is not allowed. According to borer, you have to take the good out of the bad, and here you're taking the bad out of the good. So it doesn't matter. How would be allowed? Because it's larger than a walnut. Each pickle is larger than a walnut. You're not separating pickle from pickle. You're separating the pickles from the liquid. And a chunk, a solid piece that's larger than a walnut within a liquid is not considered a mixture at all. Everyone sees clearly that this is a pickle and this is water. They're not combined at all. That's the easily differentiated situation. Whereas, if you had the exact same situation of a can of preservatives, which are olives, and you open the olive can, and you want to dump out all the water, you cannot, because each olive is smaller than a walnut. So that's considered combined already. Because the smaller the object is, it's sort of more difficult to find it within the water. That's the idea. It's a little difficult, right? It's hard to really see a difference here, but that's what the Shvitat Shabbat decided. Right. I agree. But then you have to make some type of sign. You have to have some type of border. Draw a line, like let's say in a soup. Right.
There are very large olives, though.
Yeah, here's an object, Inspector. What's that?
There are very large olives.
The what? I couldn't hear.
There are very large olives. There are olives that are very big.
Okay, that's true. That's true. So those are okay. The super sell, they sell these huge olives. Yeah. Yeah, right. Right. The average walnut. Yeah. Go to the goz. That's it's a concept that's used in halacha sometimes. Goz. Yeah, right. Yeah. It's not all right. Right. Yeah, this is very helpful in many cases, this distinction between this liquid and solid from the sides of walnut up. You can use this many, many times to help yourself separate between things when it's that size. Like if you have chicken and gravy and you'd like you had that for Friday night, again, Erev Shabbos, Leil Shabbat, meal, and you want some of the chicken to keep for tomorrow, for the daytime meal. Now you can't use the gravy because it's a liquid. You can't heat it up. You want only dry chicken. Only the Rambam would hold that you can heat up pre-cooked liquid, which got cold on the platter the next morning. Most Jews today do not do that. Only Yemenites of a certain type follow the Rambam. They can do that. So can you separate between the chicken and the gravy after the Leil Shabbos meal for tomorrow morning? Now you're taking good from bad with your hand. Doesn't have to be, again, actually hand. You can use a fork. That's considered hand. That's an extension of your hand. So you stick a fork in, you take out the chicken pieces from the gravy. Can you do that? It's not for immediate use. You're not going to heat it up right now. You're going to heat it up the following morning. 10 hours later. So normally we would say, no, you're separating Bora and Shabbat, D'oraita. But because of the Shvitat Shabbat, it tells us that a solid within a liquid that's larger than a walnut can be separated. It's not considered a mixture, so you can take out all the chicken. But
you think it's a very, very modern tshuva?
It's where does he take it from?
Wouldn't have done it, or Cook wouldn't have done it?
No, of course they would have, but the definition to tell us exactly what size, like we said before now, objectively, to get to that size that tells us differentiates when is it a mixture, when it's not, that's something that I don't know if anyone clearly stated before the Shvitat Shabbat. He's from the past, I would say 50 years, something like that. But I'm sure he took it from.
They would have all done it.
Right, without telling us. They would have considered this as non-mixture, but they just didn't tell us. They didn't define it exactly for us. Right, they did the same. The actions were the same. Right, but here, listen to this. If you have, besides the chicken and gravy, you have some potatoes, you have some other vegetables, things are in the chicken combined with all this. So now it's impossible to separate now. Why? Because let's start from taking out the chicken. So the big chunks, the big pieces of chicken are definitely larger than a walnut, and that's not a problem taking them out of the gravy. But you're separating them from the pieces of vegetables and other things. That's solid from solid. Solid from solid is already that's already a mixture. That's a mixture. So you would need to now take out of the gravy all the solids in order not to separate solid from solid. So you take out all the vegetables from the gravy. But if one of those pieces of vegetable is smaller than a walnut, then you can't take it out of the gravy. So now you're stuck. You can't take the smaller pieces of vegetables because you're separating them from the gravy if they're smaller than walnut. You can't take the big chunks of chicken out without taking out those small pieces of vegetables because you're separating the chicken from the vegetable. So you can't do anything. You have to put the entire pot in the fridge. When can you separate? Only the following morning. Because the following morning, you can take good from bad, even in a situation which consider borer, take out the pieces you would like to warm up on the plata, and leave all the rest in the pot. And that's not borer because it's for immediate use.
Well, that means there's no way.
And then you would need to put it
more than half an hour.
Okay, so I said, okay, so I said you're allowed to prepare. I said half an hour is automatic. That's automatically the time you've got, even if you don't need a full half an hour, that's considered samuch l'seudah. That's considered close enough to the Sudah. But if you need more time to prepare, and some of that need is for the fact for it to get warmed up properly, so that's considered samuch l'seudah also. But if you need only an hour and a half, let's say, for it to warm up well, it's going to be hot, perfect for eating, and you put it before going to shul, which is 3 hours before, then you're not allowed. Because you don't need the 3 hours, although it's not going to do anything bad. It's not going to burn it. It's just going to be extra hot. That's still not
only
good.
Complain about cold, they never complain about it's too hot. That's just the way it is.
Okay, but it's not necessary. The moment it's not necessary, so it's too much in advance. It has to be. If you know that after an hour and a half, no one's gonna complain that it's too cold. It's fine for them. And you have it 3 hours, then you're giving it too much time, unnecessary time to prepare before the meal. And you've taken it out of the gravy and the pieces of vegetables and all that. So, what's that?
I'm choosing the last hour and a half. But even though I put it here, it's only that's
just that stout place to put it. Yeah, that doesn't work.
Now we're discussing social norms and culture versus halacha, which is always a very delicate situation. In my betin, my kishkas, as we like to say, it doesn't sit well at all that Hashem wants my wife not to go to shul, not to daven b'tzibor, to hang around the house to make sure that it's an hour
not doing
and a half
it
instead of 2 hours and 5 minutes. Right? what can I tell you? I can't imagine Shari Shemaim. Oh, this is beautiful. This is what the Torah is meant to be. She shouldn't be part of the Zibur. She shouldn't daven with the Zibur. She shouldn't have a spiritual uplifting experience. She should stay home to do this. It just, with me, it doesn't sit well. Look, I'm being very honest with you. And it's very hard for me to believe.
Okay, so you're taking that specific example, but let's say if like you said before.
This is topless Shabbos. Women want to be part of the
right, but you would say the same with separating cutlery in order to set the table. It's all in one pile, all dry, and she's not going to toss it on the table and take each one. She wants to set the table normally, and then go to shul. That's also fine. It depends where you take it to now. Okay, that's for a different reason. We're saying situations of borer.
Right.
Do you agree that in order not to stumble over a Doraita level sin on Shabbat, you have to sometimes lose out? You know what? I'll ask you another question. In Chutz La'aretz, many towns don't have an Eruv.
Right.
No Eruv. So you could say, how can this be possible? Hashem doesn't want my wife to have an experience on Shabbat.
You chose to live in town without an Eruv.
He didn't. Many times he didn't choose. Many times that's how you brought up your parents chose to be there, and you're the child, and you're stuck in the house now.
me, the difference he's saying
Yeah.
is the difference of miyad, right? In our time, miyad becomes something that the routine is going to be able to do all the things.
Right.
And so that I understand. What you're saying resonates with me very strongly.
I think with everybody resonates. I don't think they have a dashaki.
No, but that's a different reason now. I'm trying to hear a different reason now.
What I'm trying to do is say within the context of that ochel miyad,
the miyad is defined differently. Is defined differently today.
It's a socially subjective criterion, and it's not trying to get around anything. It's not trying to set aside anything. It's saying that today, in this day and age,
you were saying that's part of.
You stay home, but your wife is sure.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that could be done too. But what can we do? A man needs to daven a minyan more than a woman.
Part of what he had to prepare for the meal
is going to shul as well.
Right before shul is preparing for the meal.
So that I hear as a halachic definition, right? Not just right. Right? The man can choose to go to Ashkan minyan. The same as David said before, you chose to live in this town without an heir. So the man chose to go to the same minyan with his wife. He can choose to go to an early minyan, come back home at 9 o'clock. He'll put the stuff on the plata, and then she goes to daven. Everything's perfect, right? So you can always. That's what I'm saying. This idea of being of that social type issues conflicting with halacha. That's not strong enough to knock down halachic issues. But what we just heard now, sorry, I don't remember your first name. Al. Thank you. What Al just said now. Similar name, Alan, is that
I said 6, Al said half a dozen. I agree with Al and I agree with you, but I'm just saying that's a difference. It's phrasing the question in a way that's making you're giving the definition of miyad a more wider definition so that there's no problem.
Okay, but
I'm not against it. I'm just saying he's polishing it more.
Yeah. Okay, so that
I said 6.
So that I can agree.
I mean,
No,
you agree with me, Al?
yeah, but it's coming from a different.
But you're right about I don't want to use the word evolution, the unfolding of holocaust.
Development.
Development. Always there. We just have to pull back and see what.
Okay.
Where Jews live in space and time is halakha is extraordinarily sensitive to the human condition. And what I don't know enough about is the dynamic between what is Torah min hashamayim and God spoke with Lashon Bnei Adam, whatever it was, and now we are jobs with the rabbis to say what that means in this space and time.
Right.
And it is absolutely the case that sometimes they are definitely sensitive to social norms and things like that because the Torah, we're not agricultural people anymore, even though a lot of talking to the economy.
Right.
Jews are allowed to go and do those things. And what's the job of the rabbis? To figure out how that plays. So it's a mystery. And I wish there was a handbook. Right?
Yeah.
You can look and see when you say this is shayach. It gets
we call it contemporary halacha. Right. Contemporary halacha. Right.
Yeah.
Torah chaim. We want a Torah that's living, not a Torah that's a dead Torah.
We all agree
that was once upon a time given, and that's it. Right. Now I agree with all that. I'm just trying to explain where I see a little bit of a difference between the two ways it was phrased here before. When we have a conflict between two concepts, then we know halacha overrides any other concept, even if it's against our human feelings and logic. Even human logic doesn't stand.
Halacha is so gamish. Rabbi Yosef says something is mutter, and an Ashkenazi position says you're aser isa deraisa. That's my point.
So what can we do?
Rubber band. You can pull it whichever way you want with it before it breaks.
We don't pull it way we want. You have a rab.
Hador. The Sephardi Gadol says it's mutter.
Right.
Ashkenazi Gadol says it's Yechayev. It's a
Chatas. Right.
Come on. Does that make sense? We're all Am Yisrael together.
Of course. There are Rabbi Kiva and Rabbi Eliezer battling each other tons of times in the Shas. One says Derais, Hil and Shabbat. One says Derais, one says Mutter. Definitely is such thing.
But this is
definitely that's how we live. That's how halacha exists from the beginning till today. That the answer to that is we must find a certain route to follow, a certain rabbi is permanent rabbi to follow, in order for us not to live contradictorily all the time, with contradictions all the time. So one has a rabbi as his rabbi, one decides a different rabbi, and that's how he goes straight through.
But the difference is so large. The difference is chayiv d'oraisa and mutter.
What can you do? There's two perspectives of the Torah, the two different eyes of Gdolim. Of course, it has to be that the Gdolim are Gdolim. The person who gives you the opinion has to be a person that's holding Torah in him, and he's able to, he's worth, his word is worth.
The person can say, in this situation, with my svara, I see like this, or the
opposite. Definitely.
Huh?
Oh, we can't pick and choose. As a layman like us, we're not the Gdolim. We can't just pick and choose. Once the Rabbi says this, I go with him. Once Shamazan says this, I go with him.
No, you can't pick and choose, but there's many times when you got someone with a shaila, you could say, Rav Shlomo Zalman says this, or Moshe Feinstein says this. Then you can't pick and choose. You should be this mochala. That's picking and choosing.
That's a little closer to going in a one route, but even that.
Lead it to the last 100 years. Two in the top 10. They both
Right.
said opposite things.
Right.
Picking and choosing.
Even then, as Al just said before, Bechai Beitila, the Gemara in Eruvin Yud Gimel discusses this and tells us that if a person goes once like Bechai, once like Beit Hillel, and believe you me, they were the top two rabbis of the generation. So I met at least like Rosh Hashanah or Moshe Feinstein. Okay, at least they were the top. They knew it all. You just had two different perspectives. So if you pick and choose between the two of them, so either you're Rasha or Exil. Both are in compliments. So it's Gemara in Eruvin Yud Gimel. So
it was much more concentrated. It wasn't like
okay, I understand your point.
You were part of that. This was your community, but that was your community. So when you did that, that's exactly why they say that. Today it's not like that.
Yeah. So
we also have in general, not specifically every rabbi, but we do have camps within the Ashkenazic world and within the Sephardic world. There are camps. We have those that go like Rav Mordechai Eliyahu and those that go like Rav Ovadia Yosef. Those are two different camps. Right? It's also a big question. We'll get into that because that's Shnei Batei Dinim B'Achat. It's not always what he's going to do. That's another tough question. We're talking about personal halachos. How do we lead our life personally in the house? What it's going to do is when you're in one community and one does this and one does that way, then it's a problem what it's going to do. And then the poskim speak about Shnei Batei Dinim B'Achat when it's something very, very known as two different camps, two different ways, then we allow that even in one community, in one. We'll get into that. That's even more complicated. But within a person's own life, personal life, how does he lead a halachic life properly? I remember this many years ago of Schechter of YU. He gave a shiur here in Shul upstairs, and the Zay Shir was here once. He gave a shiur exactly about this point, and I remember it till today because it was very important to hear from him how to lead our halachic life. And his points were, and his idea was that there are only two ways that Chazal instructed us to live a true halachic life. One is, the Torah tells us, Achrei Rabim Le'atot, it comes from the Torah. Olchim Achar Rov, it's a concept in the Gemara. Olchim Achar Rov, go by majority. So if you've got 25 rabbis saying X and 21 saying Y, so choose the 25. You count one versus the other, both two sides, and count the opinions. You take a poll and you find where's the majority of opinion. That's how you go. That's a Chavim Latot. Or, which is quite impossible today, except for Ovadia Yosef himself, who knew it all. He was able to count for all generations till his time, how many were on each side. And he many times gave sak like that. He said, if I have 33 here and 29 there, so I go by 33. But that's only a mind of Ovadia Yosef. You can do that. And the other, yeah, that's also an important thing. But after the Shulchan Aruch Maran, if it's not Maran, if he didn't speak about something, then he has to count. And then he only has the option of counting. And the other is actually exactly that. Aseh lecha rav. That's another concept of a halachic ruling. How to take halachic ruling? Aseh lecharat. He says those are the only two ways to follow a true life of halacha. Either you have a permanent rabbi to go by, or you can't. I was checking today we have the computer, so it's easy. You go on Project Shoot, the Bar Ilan response disk, and you get all the opinions in a moment. For each question.
3 or 4 hour shir, you make a lecture.
Yeah.
Many weeks at the
yeah, right.
When that concept was made, they couldn't envision the scoring behind you.
The division of so many opinions, right?
Of course. And the access to all the scoring. And now it was your Rob because he had to decide for you, but now you can check everything. I can open the Mishnah Berurah. I can open up a
yeah.
I mean, there's so much.
Of course.
So much data, they couldn't imagine that.
But it's a conceptual thing. It's not a technical thing. And conceptually, Haseh lecha means be permanent on your actions, on your rulings. Be permanent. It's like Haseh toratcha keva. Make it Torah permanent. Make it something that's standing on firm grounds. Who tells you that if you choose once of Shlomo Zalman on one point and another point you choose Moshe Feinstein, which, as you said, two giants, right. No question, both Ashkenazics, they're in the same route.
Right.
Who tells you that choosing this time this and that time that isn't contradictory? Maybe you don't know, you're not aware of something that stands behind this psak and behind that psak, and really the contradictory opinions. And that's what the Gemara says, that if you pick and choose, then you could be you could be doing a tata desatra. You're not aware of it because you don't know what's standing behind the halacha. And sometimes it's two totally different issues, and yet they could be contradictory because what's lying behind it is something that a different understanding in the Gemara, the same Gemara. So that's why it's safer. It's much more safe to follow one rabbi. Now I know it's very difficult. Nowadays, rarely does a person have one rabbi. In the Sephardic world, Rav Ovadia Yosef just conquered the world. Not almost, I know, not completely, but almost. And they're lucky enough to have such a rabbi. We don't have, Ashkenazic world doesn't have such a rabbi that was so overwhelming and overpowering over everyone else and able to write such an extensive, with his son also, the Yekut Yosef, Rabbi Yitzchak Yosef, came out with an actual, much more than a handbook, but it allows the maybe 30 volumes, allows you to check every point in halacha, in your entire life, allows you in one book, in one set, to find everything. The one who's attempting to, in the Ashkenazic world, to do the same today is Rabbi Eliezer Melamed. Right, the Pnei Halacha. Pnei Halacha, it's definitely a different league, but it's getting to a point where it's spreading within schools. Schools today, every school, my kids' schools, everywhere they go to, they're always learning Pnei Halacha. That's it. That's become the most common book. By the way, for Ashkenazim and Sephardim, it's conquered even the Yekut Yosef.
In the Tilumi world,
yes, the Tilumi world, definitely. It's not. It hasn't entered the Haredi world at all. And even in the Tilumi world, there are sections that don't agree with the way he issues psak, and they don't accept him as a posek. But it's becoming more and more. I believe that in a generation from now, because the kids are growing up on it, they're being taught grade A, grade 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, till 12th grade. They're being taught from the Pnei Halacha. That's how they're learning halacha today. I believe in another generation from now, people will be using this, the Pnei Halacha, as one of the main, almost instead of Mishnah Berurah. For at least for the majority of the layman population, not the big dolim, but the Amcha, the people, will be using it as their handbook. Kaddish Derabanan? Yeah, right. Kaddish Derabanan only, not the... What? Oh, Baruch Hu. Baruch Hu, I don't think so. I don't think Baruch Hu is part of it. I didn't hear about it. You think so? What? Of course. You need a minyan.
Yeah,
And not all the Kaddishim either.
no.
Only Kaddish Rabbanan, which is the Kaddish that said over learning Torah. Ali Samuel Rabbanan. Only that one. Not Yesh Meirab, Yesh Amaram.
One of the synagogues in Seattle.
Yeah.
I don't know how many.
Yes, quite a few here also. I know at Chove, I think even here, didn't they do that?
When does it become Narashan?
No, today, not right now, currently is definitely not. At least in Israel, right? In Israel. And now it is in Chutzar. Yeah, he's written really, really very special set of books. What's that? Broad shoulders also, yes. Not as broad as the Gdolim we spoke about before. He himself would admit it's not Lashon Hara. He tells us that he doesn't create psak, barely does he create psak, but he writes beautifully, and he's able to concisely summarize many of the poskim that were before him, and lead to some way of psak from within those Gdolim. He's not one of that level, right? He's barely mechadesh. He's barely the one that makes psak, but he has a very clear way of and a decisive way of summarizing all the opinions before him and making a final psak from within all the opinions. So that's very unique. But that's from our point of view a selech harav. If one follows a Rebbe Malamed, that's his rab. It's up to him to decide how come. That's one of the problems that some people have with the Pnei Halacha, that they say, who are you to decide that once you're taking up Shomazan, why say the same problem we have as laymen, not to pick and choose, so why can you do that? That's sort of
any Rav's going to do that. You happen to be a real Talmud Buvak of Rav Shlomo.
Right.
I think your contemporary friends, your contemporaries, I don't think very few of them have the same kind of kesher with one rabbi.
Passion and kesher, right.
Say, David, you're wrong. You covered that.
No, you're right. You're right. You're definitely right.
Right. So your kivun, we know when I ask you a shaila, I know this is what Rav Shlomo Zalman would answer.
Yeah.
It's fine. I like that.
Hopefully, I wish.
Okay.
I wish I would have all his the correct answers.
Other rabbis, they would also say they would look into it, and one time they would give me an answer based on Shlomo Zalman. One time they would give me Rav Elyashiv. One time they would give me Rav Moshe.
That's
what they felt. They did the research.
Did the research. Yes.
That's what they agree with.
Right.
Unlike the Rav, because you are such a Talmid Mufak of one
rabbi. Right.
What I'm doing.
I agree with that, but that's only if you're in a level of understanding the within of the psak, what led the posting to reach that psak. If you're a big enough rabbi to learn the Igros Moshe and see the sources and learn Shlomo Zalman and learn Rav Elyashiv, learn the Tzitz Eliezer, learn Vosner, all these big dolim, and then decide in the sugya itself, I understand the sugya of the Gemara more like this one, then that's fine. That, by the way, can even be done by a student that's not an all big rabbi. If he learns in and out the sugya very well with all the Rishonim and Achronim, and he's led to think a certain way, and his own rabbi thinks differently, he mustn't go by his rabbi. That's something that's very unknown. There's a whole long article by Rabinovich, of late Rabinovich from Ma'ale Adumim. He wrote an article about this, that Emunas Chachamim, it's a very wrong way of using that concept the way they use it today, mainly in the Haredi world. That Emunas Chachamim is something like you're blindfolded, you just go by the rabbi. He says that's not true. There was never such a thing in Chazal. Das Torah, all these concepts, never such a thing. You had to intellectually understand the halach. And if there's a student, he brings a lot of proof, many proofs for that. There's a famous Rosh, Rabbeinu Asher Rosh. It's one of the three pillars of halacha for the B'tz Yosef, for the Shulchan Aruch. One of the greatest, to his father, one of the greatest thinkers, halachic thinkers we ever had. And the Rosh himself speaks about Rishonim of his generation, arguing against the Geonim, which were the period before all the Rishonim. And today we don't dare dispute Rishonim. As a Chroni, we don't do Rishonim. So for Rishonim to dispute Geonim is also unheard of. But the Rosh clearly says that if a Rishon, a person from his generation, learns the Sugya and the Gemara thoroughly and well, and decides that the Geonim opinion isn't the correct way of learning the Sugya, then he mustn't follow the Geonim. Mustn't. It's just that. So where does the Emunat Chachayim come in place? Or when do we find those gaps between Geonim, Rishonim, Achronim? It's the seriousness you need in order to argue. When you see a Gaon and you're a Rishon, then wow, you need to be very, very firmly understand the Sugya so well in and out that you really, really believe it's not true the way they decided. Or same with and same as within the Achronim. If I would like to argue against Moshe, I need to have tremendous amounts of proofs that my way is more correct. It's barely possible, rarely possible. Yeah. Yeah.
He has a Kivan that's 30 pages.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Oh yeah.
It's extraordinary.
Wow. Well, I'd like to see that. I'd like to see that.
Today. So how are you going to rabbi today? How do you make it?
Right. And he comes to this idea also that Emunat Chachayim doesn't mean like blindly follow a rabbi. It means, you know that, right? No, so let's put it this way. If you don't have the ability to check the sources, and of course,
that's the easy way out.
Selech Harav, right? No, then Chazal instruct you Selech Harav. That's what they were talking about. One of the proofs I remember now from the Rabinovich uses is within the Mishnah that speaks about there are 48. The Mishnah in the beginning of the 6th chapter of Avos, there are 48 ways to acquire Torah. So talking about right, to acquire Torah. So within that is Emunas Chachamim. It's one on the list there, and after the one that one on the list, it says Pilpula Talmidim. So Rabinovich asked the very obvious question: why isn't it in the opposite order? Pilpula Talmidim is when the students learn with each other. Chavrusa, they're doing a pilpul, they're learning this way and that way, and you can say anything you want. After that, it should say Emunat Chachamim, because then you go to the rabbi and he tells you do this, and that's it. He says, no, it's the opposite order. Have Emunat Chachamim, firstly, meaning listen to your rabbi very carefully, appreciate what he has to say, think very highly of him and what he has to say, take it very seriously. But on top of that, Pilpula Talmidim. On top of that, check it as if you can on your own, and go in and out and try to evaluate the situation, halachic situation with the sugya and everything else. And then if you think otherwise, then do otherwise. And by the way, that means also to have a discourse with your rabbi. Discuss it with him. Show what I found this, I found that. And if you do all that, if you're not convinced that his way is more correct, then do it your way. That's one of his proofs there. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Zoom. Thank you. I didn't know that. That's a huge chiddush. That needs really broad shoulders. Because Baruch Hu is a... So you did that as well? You did that by Zoom? You did that Baruch Hu also? Uh-huh.
I thought it should be criteria. I think that you shouldn't talk to Minyan on Zoom if you're video.
At least to see each other. At least see each other.
Well, that makes sense.
That's Mahadran.
Yeah, that's what Mahadran. Yeah, right. Yeah. Okay, see, we're over time. So we never made it to our book, but we definitely discussed Hilchos Shabbos well with Borer and all the different examples, and a little bit of how to reach Psak Halacha properly. Okay, so have a good week. Shavua Tov, Bochim to you. Shavua Tov. Kol Tov.